So I'm going to go to the tools and I'm going to go to edit task options wizard. Okay, so it's edit task options wizard here in the tools menu. So what we're going to do is we're effectively configuring how we want our assembly line to work. So our assembly line is it starts out, an email gets sent to the client and then tells the client we need the information by a certain date. Then we have our internal in-house due date, and then we have the actual due date. So think of that as the assembly line. So I'm clicked on HST quarterly as a task. And first of all, I can define how I want the task name to be named. So you can see here that when I scheduled the task, it came up with 4th HST quarterly return, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, so on and so forth. The reason I put the numbers in front is because I had the number check mark here says create numbered names. Now, if I want to, I can change this. So instead of saying quarterly HST return, I could say HST return dash quarterly. Okay, so you can just change the formatting of how we establish the name here. Okay, you can set up the initial estimated time. So again, we're focusing on HST. Now this is a global setting, so this is for all clients. Okay, so this would be an average. So let's say that on average it takes us 2 hours and 30 minutes to do the average HST. Now we know that there's going to be many clients where it might be shorter or longer than that, but we're sort of setting up a default average just to save ourselves a little bit of time. The next thing that we're going to set up is the documents. So we want to now use ClientTrack's new feature to control the documents a lot better, to establish what documents we need the client to bring in. We're going to establish for HST quarterly tasks a default list of the types of documents we need from each client. So I've established a list here and says, okay, generally whenever we do the HST quarterly, we need all the credit card statements, we need all their bank statements. Some clients are going to have PayPal, so we need some PayPal information. Other clients might have, Eventbrite and payables, receivables. So you're going to use this as an example. Now, in your case, this is going to be a blank list, so you're going to have to add these in because I've already added this in as part of my sample data. But you would sort of effectively add in a generic global list of the types of things that you need for HST quarterly. And then you're going to check off this check mark here, and it says when scheduling tasks of this type, always prompt to set up the internal and client document requests. Okay, and I'll show you what this means. But basically, it'll prompt you. I'll show you what that is in a second. So in addition to being able to create a list of what you need from the clients, you can also create an internal list of how the task needs to be created or completed internally. So think of this as like a operating procedure. Okay, so having explained all that, so let's put this all together. Okay, so I'm going to go no HST payments, and we're going to start from the beginning, but now looking at it from the point of view of the more advanced stuff that I've shown you. So for a new client, workshop client part 1, I'm going to click on quarterly. Okay, and we're going to say yes. So what it's done is it's popped up with this particular form here. Okay, and that's what this check mark is. So when scheduling tasks, always prompt for the types of documents. So we have our generic list here, credit card, bank statements, PayPal. This is what we had in the previous form. But I'm now going to edit this so that it's specific to this client. So we're clicking HST quarterly for the workshop client part 1. So I'm going to change credit card statement, and I'm going to make it specific for this card and this client and say, okay, we need a Visa statement ending 456. Okay, I'm going to add a new item, and I'm going to change this from an instruction to a document, and I'm going to say that we also need the MasterCard statement. Okay, and then I could even add in, say, let's say they have an Amex card as well. Okay, and then now I'm going to look at the bank statements and say, okay, they bank with the TD Bank and their business account number is this. And then I could add another one and say that we need a document and it's a CIBC. So I'll say CIBC, and I'd put the account number of their secondary bank account. Let's say that this client does not have Eventbrite, so we're going to delete the Eventbrite items here that was just there as an example. And I'm going to move our, change the order of our documents here. So I'll put the credit cards all together, and then I'll put the bank accounts together. Now, for the PayPal login, this is actually an instruction. So this is a little bit different. So I have the option of choosing whether it's a specific document I'm requiring, or whether I'm giving the client an instruction. So in the case of PayPal, I want to tell the client, okay, your username, and then if I want to, I can put the password here, or at least I can remind them of what their password is if I don't want to type in their actual password within here. And then I would say, click menu item A, and then after that you have to click button B, and then you say create report with monthly date range. Okay, and then you say export to CSV. So you're giving the client a reminder of the report you need. So generally in the case of PayPal, you need the entire transaction report for the period in question. So you're reminding the client, okay, you need to go here, 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 and do this, and create the report. Okay, then once the CSV is exported, or the Excel spreadsheet, the second item actually requests that as an export. So the first is an instruction on what to do. The second is a request for the resulting document. And then you have general payables and receivables that they have collected. So all their invoices, bills, purchase orders, that type of thing would be included in the bundle paperwork. Okay, so that's what we need from the client. Now, this is the internal thing. So as I said, I have an example: data entry, account reconciliation, data verification, calculate remittance amount, file online to my account, email amount to client to pay online. Okay, so I would be able to get a lot more specific. So if I wanted to, under the account reconciliation, I could list all the Visa and bank statements there as well, so that we can check off, okay, yes, I reconciled the Visa, I reconciled the MasterCard, the Amex, and so on and so forth. So this is your internal set of instructions and what you need to do. So no matter who you give this HST to in terms of staff within your office, they can remind themselves of all of the things that they need to do, so that each return effectively gets done efficiently, quickly, even if the person working on this HST is not familiar with this types of clients' HST. Okay, so you get the idea. So now when I go close, it schedules the 4 tasks in the same way that it scheduled before. But the difference now is because we specified the documents, when I edit any task, now we have a list with a check mark beside it of all the documents required. So there's 2 very, very useful uses for this. Let's say that the client walks in their front door. So now with the way ClientTrack is configured, when the person receives the information from the client, instead of the client turning around and simply walking out and the person just filing the paperwork, now that person who receives the paperwork can say to the client, oh, I'm glad you brought the stuff in, just wait 5 minutes and let me make sure that you have everything that we need. So even if the person who receives the paperwork from the client was hired yesterday, it doesn't matter. They have the ability in ClientTrack to know exactly what's due. So they can pull up this list and they can go through the paperwork while the client's still standing there and say, okay, thank you very much. You brought the Visa. I see the MasterCard statement. You have the American Express. Okay, you have the CIBC. Here's the TD. Okay, you did the PayPal. We have the CSV export. Now, let's say the person realizes, well, I'm expecting a whole bunch of invoices and payables from you. And the client says, oh, that's right, I forgot about that. So the person is vetted right at the front door immediately that there's something missing, instead of you figuring this out 2 weeks later when you actually go to work on the job, when you're already well into the time when it should be completed. Okay, So if we go back to the task info, you see that we have the check mark that says received all documents. Each document itself is date stamped with the name of the person who received the document and who checked that check mark. Okay, so different documents might have come in on different days, but eventually when all the documents come in and the client brings everything in, that received all check mark gets checked. So now it tells you that we received all the documents today on September 25th, and there's a note below that says on time, and it's saying on time because the goal was to receive the documents before November 15th. Okay. So now you've got a flag that explicitly tells you whether you've received all the information, and you have the ability to vet the information. Okay, so now this task can be set to in progress, and away you go. All right, so that's one of the neat paradigm changes. Now, this list of documents is actually available to the client online through the portal. So the client can log in online, and it's very, very easy, and they'll see that the tasks that you're working on. So they'll log in and say, okay, you're working on an upcoming HST and a payroll. When they click on HST, they'll see the documents you need, and they can upload the PDF version of all the documents. So if the client is technology inclined and they want the app on their phone and they want to be able to do this, they can absolutely do this. So when the client uploads the files, we check these same check marks here. So regardless of whether the client is walking in the front door to give you the documents or whether they're being self-sufficient and they're uploading the files themselves, these check marks and the info received check mark are tied to what happens in the portal, and they're tied to what the staff are doing internally. Okay.